All right, guys, what's going on? This is the quick version, quick for me because we may get chatty as I talk about the comics. Did a live show this morning. Why I didn't go to Heroes Con, personal announcements, whatever it's called, but it's June 30th, 2019. I showed some of these books. It ended up being almost a 2 hour show, and it was phenomenal, hour and a half show. And I'm back, and the reason I'm going to hurry up and record the quick version of some comics that I've gotten at of all places, a Books a Million in Northern Virginia while I was on a trip for work. And then what I got at a convention called RobCon, that was in Kingsport, Tennessee. And it is run by a guy named Robert Pilk, who owns Mount Empire Comics in Bristol, Virginia. But anyway, the lighting was perfect in here, and then I sit down to do this, and these clouds have rolled in. Normally, I thought we were going to get by with a Sunday Howler Mouse video. We did have a live show where we didn't have any problems, but apparently it's going to rain. And what do we say on this channel? Rainy Sundays, it's time to read comic books. Okay, so I already talked about RobCon. Made a big announcement in that, a big personal announcement in that live show, so I'm not going to do it here. So we're going to get straight to the comics. Now, one or two of these comics I've might have mixed up with a flea market haul here, but it's not going to hurt anything if we're going to do this. First thing that I found at this Books a Million, I wasn't even looking for comics. It amazed me. Um, I went in just to kind of see what books were on sale. I've been reading the book It. I'm over halfway through with it, Stephen King's It. So I was kind of in there, kind of like just looking around. I'm looking for things like the art of Atari, the art in Arcadia or something of Dungeons and Dragons, and there's a Masters of the Universe book I want to get where they reprint all their mini comics. So that's kind of what I was looking for. Lo and behold, I kind of walk by a shelf. I don't really pay attention to it, and then on my way out, I just kind of happen to glance to my right here, and they've got shelves and shelves of old comics. I don't know if they bought somebody's collection. I'm like, this is crazy. What's going on? So I ended up finding a few things there. Let's get these out of the way. All right, so one of the things I found, and I'll pick these up all day, is an edition of From Hell, Volume 7, first print of by Alan Moore. And this is, of course, the story of Jack the Ripper. It has been collected in a sort of a phone book type collection. It's black and white. It's fantastic. I read it once. I said I would never read it again. I read it twice. It's even better. And so I started doing a little research, and it's amazing how these books pop up. They're square bound, high quality paper. I think they were put out through Kitchen Sink or someone. I'm not sure, but it started winning awards as it came out. Yeah, Kitchen Sink Press. But the research I did, and I'm going to look at it again, is that apparently this thing came out from 1990 to 99. Which explains why I wasn't really able to find it or even see it creep up in comic book shops. So that's the story of Jack the Ripper. The way I heard it, Alan Moore spent like 5 years researching everything Jack the Ripper, and this is his idea of who did it. And there's another collected edition that came out where you have the annotations of things that Alan Moore researched and where you can find it in a bibliography and things like that. I mean, it's very intricate. It's almost like this would have been like someone's life work there for a while with all the detail and stuff that he put into it. Now, I was talking about Legion. I'm going to have some Legion stuff. We're still in the books that I got at the Books a Million. But this book is not worth a lot from what I can tell. This series only ran maybe 3 years and stuff, right? Got it for $1. But I'm assuming it's because it's a dark side cover that it's hard to find in the wild, right? But we plugged up a big hole, number 28. This is part of a bigger story. There is this thing about the dark side of the future taking on the Legion. You had the Great Darkness Saga. They sort of did a sequel to it. And 5 Year Legion, 5 years later, Legion of Superheroes. Which kind of fell flat with a lot of people, but it was very existential, if you will. And now we have this where Abnett and Lanning, I had those names represented to me during the live show today, have come on and they did their take of a volume of Legion comics, which is very good. They brought in Ra's al Ghul, played around with a few things. This came right out of the 12-issue miniseries Legion Lost, and we ended up getting some Tony Harris covers here, and they took on Darkseid again. I can finally read this multi-part story because I've been looking for this for a while. Let's see what we got going on here, and then just a few things. I have a series on here in a playlist. Other people have collected it, and it amazes me how 3 or 4 years I think have gone by, and I really need to complete it. There are 27 issues in this series. It took them almost a decade to get the whole thing out, if I remember right. And I was going issue by issue with 10-15 minute video of each one, and they were extremely draining, with, believe it or not, with you had to do a little bit of research. I had to think through in the old Hallerpedia of the mind here to see what they're doing, but it was Planetary. I already have a full set of Planetary. I already have a hardback of Batman meets Planetary. I've got all the one shots. Had a buddy that was kind enough to send me one of the one shots signed by John Cassidy and stuff like that. This was by Warren Ellis and John Cassidy. It was Planetary. I'm working on my second set. I've got a stack of them over here, and I'm filling in that second set because I'm going to send them off to get them bound. I'm probably going to do Sword of the Atom miniseries of 1984 with the 3 one-shots that came with it, and I'm going to make sure there's nothing else out there. And then I'm probably going to do Planetary. You know, I just want a bound comic to have in my collection. Have something unique. So here's number 2 where we deal with the kaiju. Of course, Planetary is something that I need to pick up on. I think I have 15 videos of this, and getting this little haul here reminded me of all the issues and things I wish I could do. And I hope this is going to come out all right. Very unprofessional for me to point it out, but the sun, as the clouds are moving out there. But anyway, here's probably my very, very, very most favorite comic out of the whole series. It's number 22, The Torture of William Leather. We get a version of the Lone Ranger where this story just blew me away. It blew me away. It's one of the things where I just really have to give a golf clap to Warren Ellis there. That was fantastic. We play around with the idea of basically Galactus's ship and the Four's version of the Thing, if you will. This is part two of a two-part story there, which is really fantastic. And what you're looking at here isn't some, Illuminati pyramid eyeball thing, though I think that's what Ellis is trying to kind of point out and give you the idea. We're looking at the eyeball of the character who would be the Thing in this, if you will. In Planetary, the Four, tightly based on the Fantastic Four, are the bad guys, if you will, and they part of the mystery is what each one looks like. We have the Bullet Club, which is a really cool issue, even though it has sort of a sad ending in a way, but it's amazing. It's really fun. And then we have the psychedelic cover here of Planetary. I hope these are showing up. So we're getting closer to that stuff, right? Now we're on to the Rob Con Hall, and I'm moving along here, right? Everything in here except for 2 books was $1 or 50 cents, right? And of course, I would get them to round it up or down, so a little bit cheaper. I get these Marvel graphic novels. This is Dazzler the movie, a Bill Sinkovich cover. Nothing says the 80s like a Bill Sinkovich cover, especially when he starts throwing out those purples or reds, those hot and cool colors and things that he throws out there. Written by Jim Shooter, but obviously Bill Sinkovich unfortunately did not do the insides of this, but it's kind of fun to get these. I'm real picky on, because of space and stuff, of what books I get and don't get now. I don't want to just be a completist and stuff, but these Marvel graphic novels the DC graphic novels bring up a little bit of nostalgia. They are of their era, and they were special when they came out. So of course I picked this up. I don't know if this was referenced in continuity or what was going on, but Jim Shooter is a solid writer. Something else, like I said, I'm getting more focused on my collecting here, where I want to finish up. I'm getting old, guys. I'm getting old. I've done this a long time. I'm getting old. It's time for me to fill in, complete those little runs and collections and stuff, man. It's time to do it. So basically, Omega the Unknown. I now have pretty sure I have a full set of this. I'll be cataloging these later today. But 7, 8, and 9 in no particular order. Kurt Busiek has a letter in one of these in the 70s. Kurt Busiek, the comic book writer. That's how he kind of broke into comics. He built up a lot of relationships with editors in the letter sections. some Gil Kane covers on this, but Steve Gerber did most of these. I think there was a fill-in issue. He didn't get to finish the series. It got finished in Defenders, still not by Steve Gerber. But I've always said something about this book. I knew about Omega the Unknown since I was about 10, thanks to the official handbook of the Marvel Universe from back in the day. I've got an issue over there where I just read what they had to say about Omega. But it's sort of a takeoff on Superman and sci-fi and robots and a kid and his robot, if you will, or is it a robot, or what's the secret? That kind of thing. There's a mystery to it, but it was well ahead of its time. To me, this would have been probably one of those early Vertigo books and stuff, right? So I said it before in this morning, getting chatty about these, but this was probably one of the first Fantastic Four stories that grabbed me because Kirby scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. Long story short, but we had these Marvel Treasury editions that are this size, right? Compared the comics to it and stuff, right? And they collected this four-part story that ran in Fantastic Four. Volume 1, back in the Silver Age into the Bronze Age, 120 to 123, and it's my story. It turned me on to John Buscema that I could remember and things like that. Just a really great stuff, and it gave me this character that I still like to this day. Right there, Airwalker, you know, which is just fantastic. He has another name, but I don't want to ruin the story. It gets very biblical, if you will. I kind of talked about it and stuff, right? But I got both of these for $10. This one is in lower grade than I'd wish for, but the guy at RobCon had this going for all his books were half off, and he had a ton of Bronze Age stuff, right? There's a few things I kind of wished I went back and gotten, but I'm not real greedy. So that we got that. I got two and three of that story. I think last month, and sitting right here beside me. So I'm very happy with that, right? And then, like I said, I'm just filling in these little runs. Even though Kirby scared me as a kid, that I've said before, I turned into a nut of his. These were $1 a piece, even though they're marked at $10, and they're phenomenal shape, right? But if I remember right, this is Machine Man #8, the last issue that Kirby worked on, with the Bob Layton inks on that cover. And then the issue number 10, number 9, 10? I have number 9. Yeah, number 9 is the last Kirby. And then Ditko came on here. And I talked a little bit about Machine Man in that live show that I did this morning where, he kind of reminded me of like Inspector Gadget. And I felt like he was a cartoon when I was a kid and stuff, right? Hellblazer, I've said this many times. I was going for the full 300 issue run. I got well over 200 issues of the original series here. And it's very inconsistent. I can name 4 or 5 writers off of on my hand that are probably the way to go. I would tell people to get certain runs by certain writers on this, okay? And Garth Ennis, this was his first American work. And this is a story that really helped define Constantine, um, with the Bad Habits storyline, which was used in the Constantine movie. All right, and I'm filling in holes here. Legion of Superheroes. I'll probably talk about the Legion here in a minute, but there's a lot of talk of Legion going on because at the time of this writing, people have been waiting for the Justice Society of America and the Legion of Superheroes to be brought back in DC. They've been building up to it for a while, stumbled along the way at DC, and now they've announced that Ryan Sook and Brian Michael Bendis will be bringing them back. Okay, Manhunter 270. Got this for $1. Some great Bronze Age stuff. How could I pass it up? Don't really have a lot to tell you about this Manhunter 27 character. It's just great sci-fi. My comments are always that it seems like in the Bronze Age, and how dare I say it's Silver Age, some of DC's best work was their non-superhero related titles. It's like they could nail anything except that. They even made, I had to get this for $1. This is a Silver Age book of Anthro, the first boy, if you will. Like I said, getting into Marvel stuff, plugging up holes. I got this Namor. I bought the first 36 issues of Namor when John Byrne returned to Marvel off the stands. Loved the series. He played around with it. It really felt like Byrne was just having a good time with this. And I missed number 14. I don't know if they didn't order it. It was just gone. It wasn't on the rack, when I went to find it. And I'm realizing that was almost 30 years ago. And I'm like, I really need to get this to plug that hole up. So I have the first 36 issues now. Really great series. I had runs of 80s books that I bought off the stands. Captain America, Thor, Tom DeFalco, Ron Friend's years specifically, Mark Grunwald. I had runs there. Fantastic Four is one after Byrne left. Stevie Englehart came on after Roger Stern was there. I mean, I love these live shows that helps fill in the gaps and brings back the memories. But I sold them to my brother in the '90s, I think. And after they're gone, there was two issues I really wished I'd kept, and it's these two, Fantastic Four, 310, 305. As you can see, the thing got rocky, because he was exposed to more cosmic rays, and he got a girlfriend that was Miss Thing. She was like the second Miss Marvel, and she became Miss Thing on that. And there's something about this cover. Buscema came on. I'll go ahead and tell you, this little run of Fantastic Four, it really does feel like they were kind of calling some of it in, if you will, in my opinion. But there's just something about that cover that it just feels like classic Marvel. I really like that cover, the big blue sky. I don't know. It just feels like Marvel. There's an intangible there where I look at it and I can't really tell you why I like it. And then the Legionnaires here. We're going to talk a little bit about the Legion going on. There's been many, many volumes of the Legions, and it's really easy after the '90s, for a group that's been around since the '50s. It got really confusing after the '90s. 0 Hours, reboots, the 3-boot, Legion Lost, the Abnett Landing years, that horrendous Mark Waid Volume 3 or whatever it was. I don't know what that crap was, but the horrendous Mark Waid Barry Kitson series that came out in the mid 2000s or something. It was supposed to be like a revamp or a reboot. And then you have this book here that I've talked about, where it's called Legionnaires. Basically, what happened is after the Baxter series ended in 1988 or something like that, we'd had a pretty good continuity of Legion of Superheroes being adventure comics. Then they shared a book with Superboy. Then that turned into their own book, and then they got their official #1 with the direct market 1984 Baxter series. And you were pretty good up until then. And then they did a 5-year jump with Legion of Superheroes, 5 years later, which I enjoyed. I got a kick out of it. I shouldn't have. It's one of those things where I was a purist, but I was good with it. And then 0 Hour happened. But anyway, this book, though, kind of is an oddity in its own, because the 5-year later book had people kind of complaining and things. I mean, it really wasn't well received from what I remember. Pre-internet days, guys. So what they did is they ended up having them find the Silver Age Legion in a cave. Okay, the grown-up Legion found the Silver Age version in a cave, and it went back and forth that these were clones. Okay, cloning was a thing. And they kind of left it vague. Was it were these clones of the original Legion who are older, or is it the older 5-year Legion that's clones of the originals here? So they left it back and they gave them their own book. So you had your 5 years later Legion of Superheroes book going on, and if you wanted your lighter toned, teenage kids Legion, you got them in Legionnaires. Okay, so I got all these for 50 cents a piece, filling in some gaps and stuff. These were fun. They brought in Roger Stern on them, and Mark Waid worked on them, I think. And then when 0 Hour came out, we got another reboot there. And just some fun stuff here. You get to read them. And then if you've been following this channel, nothing fancy to say here, but I like the description of this book. Grant, a guy named Grant and Giffen, plotted this book. Barry Kitson drew it. And we had some great covers by McGuire here, but this was sort of in the cosmic corner of DC. Okay, what was going on, and it had ties to the Legion of the Future with certain characters and races and things like that. And after finally reading them, I'm pretty much going to complete it. But the Giffen Grant years are the ones to get. Lobo pops up, Captain Comic, a version of Mon-El that they're fixing here, and all this stuff. These were 50 cents a piece, but there were some cool things going on in this. And somebody did a description in the live show or left a comment that I thought was really cool, is that this was the older grown-up brother, mature line, if you will, of the Manties and Giffen on their Justice League run. You know what I mean? This is the more mature stuff. There's some things going on in it and stuff, right? So that's pretty much the haul. Now, Bendis coming on with his Legion. I might just do a video all on its own on there, but I'm real curious on what's going on. I may record my thoughts before the book comes out and then do a video after it comes out because I'm going to be checking it out. And I'm not sure if I'm going to like it or not, but we'll find out. All right, guys, thanks for hanging in there and catch you later.